First, before I get too deep into the search and what we found, let me tell you a little bit about the actual legend in case you haven't heard the story before. The myth goes like this. In 1610, King Philip of Spain ordered the construction of 3 ships to be built in Acapulco. They were to be used for the harvesting of pearls along the Pacific coast of Mexico. These vessels of a type named caravels would be smaller and more maneuverable than the 200-ton galleons that had transported the first conquistadors from Cuba to Veracruz. The caravels would have shallow draft, square sails, and 13 rows of oars on each side, which would allow them to navigate easily in shallow water regardless of the wind direction. The ships were completed in 1612, and they immediately set sail under the command of Captains Alvarez de Cordone, Pedro de Rosales, and Juan de Iturbe. I got that right. Between them, they had 40 experienced pearl divers who were actually slaves brought over from the Portuguese colony of Sierra Leone in West Africa. It was no accident that the ships were heading north. Nearly 80 years earlier, Hernan Cortez had sailed up to the tip of Baja and found the Bahia de La Paz, which was loaded with oysters that produced perfectly shaped black pearls. At the time, pearls were in great demand and even more valuable than gold, believe it or not. But the Spanish were unable to establish a permanent settlement in La Paz because of the large numbers of hostile natives and a lack of fresh food and water. So the ships led by Cordone passed La Paz but traded for pearls at other coastal villages along the coast of Baja. But at one village, things went awry when Cordone promised to trade a basket of clothing for a basket of pearls. The native chief was surprised to find that his basket was filled with worm-eaten cloth. The chief had expected clothing like that worn by the officers. So that angered the chief, who shot Cordone in the chest with an arrow, and while he wasn't killed, the captain was forced to return to Acapulco for medical treatment. He ordered his 2 fellow captains to sail their ships further up the Sierra Cortez and gather pearls. At present-day Mulige, the men hit the jackpot. Big storm had washed thousands of oysters up onto the beach, and the men quickly filled their baskets with the highly prized pearls, with a minimum of effort, obviously. But upon their departure, Captain Rosales' caravel struck a reef and began to take on water. Captain Iturbe brought his ship alongside the sinking vessel and moved its cargo and crew into his own. Now Iturbe had a decision to make: return to Acapulco early or continue north and load up with even more pearls. He chose the latter. For a week he sailed further north until his ship entered a large estuary. Gradually the route narrowed and then opened up into what was described as a great inland sea. This would have been probably the ancient Lake Cahuilla, today's much smaller Salton Sea. Captain sailed along the eastern edge of that inland sea and continued up the Colorado River nearly 100 miles to the site of modern-day Blythe in California, and that's actually where the 10 crosses the Colorado River today. It was here that Iturbe decided to turn around. He sailed back down the river and crossed the great inland sea, but in the weeks since their arrival, the water level had fallen tremendously. A miles-long continuous ring of sandbars blocked their exit. Kind of not an unusual occurrence here. They were trapped, and Iturbe and his men circled around the inland sea for 3 days until the ship eventually ran aground. The crew gathered as much of the cargo as they could carry, and then they abandoned the ship. Most of them survived the long and miserable walk back to the Spanish settlement of Galleons, and a few months later they were transported back to Acapulco on a Spanish galleon. However, their ship and the majority of the cargo of pearls were to remain forever stuck in the edge of the great inland sea, covered by sand dunes. Miles of them around here too. If you want to be notified when we release new videos, and if you want more info on this particular search and other treasure myths that we're working on, be sure to give us a thumbs up or like this video, and make sure that you subscribe or that you follow us if you're not already. More to follow.